In a world overflowing with magic, monsters called Nemesis fall from the sky. They can curse and infect everything with their touch. Those who survive the attack and curse of Nemesis also gain the ability to wield a magical power known as Fantasia, making them sorcerers. In the village of Pompo Hills lives Seth, a 15-year-old teenage boy who is cursed as a sorcerer. He strives to become the world's greatest sorcerer to save the world from Nemesis and bring peace between sorcerers and humanity. One day Seth meets his friend Tommy to show him magic spells. Seth tries to activate several spells from his guardian, Alma's grimoires, but he fails all the attempts. Suddenly Seth uses his Titan spell to land a punch on a huge boulder, which smashes the boulder into a nearby farm and destroys the cattle ranch. As a result, the cattle go on a rampage and chase after these two. During shopping, Alma sees Seth creating a ruckus in the market. She glares at him in anger, which makes Seth scared to death. She steps forward and uses her magic to create a wind force to stop the rampage cows. After dealing with the situation, she scolds Seth for causing trouble again. Suddenly a villager hits her with a rock. All the villagers insult and blame the sorcerers for bringing misfortune and demand them to leave the town. Alma takes responsibility for all the damages. She and Seth then fly away on her broom. On their way, Seth apologizes for his mistakes. Later, Seth cleans Alma's floating house as a punishment. Alma warns him of getting arrested by the royal capital, and also explains that people look down on sorcerers because they see them the same way they see Nemesis. In short, they consider sorcerers monsters. The next day, Seth goes to practice magic again with Tommy. He tells Tommy that he will become a Nemesis hunter like Alma to help her out. Suddenly, they see the giant Nemesis egg falling towards the village. Since Alma is out hunting, Seth decides to fight the Nemesis alone while Tommy goes to warn people. Seth arms himself with all Alma's magical tools present in the floating house Alma's observatory. His bats carry him towards the Nemesis egg, but he accidentally falls from the sky and lands on the Nemesis egg. Suddenly, the Nemesis egg hatches and the giant Nemesis starts attacking him. Seth uses his magical explosives, but nothing happens. He strikes Nemesis with his sword, but Nemesis blows Seth with a heavy punch. Nemesis then moves to crush Tommy, who was rushing towards Seth to save him, but Seth takes Tommy's place and is nearly crushed by the Nemesis. Suddenly, the group of 4 Nemesis hunters called Bravery Quartet appears, and they strike the Nemesis with a magic spell. Bravery Quartet then binds Nemesis with a magic seal and then introduces themselves to the villagers. Seth asks to join the fight with them. Impressed by his bravery, Don Bossman, their leader, agrees to his request. When villagers intervene and insult Seth, Don Bossman reveals that he is a sorcerer like Seth and expresses his faith in Seth. He asks Seth to act as a decoy to distract Nemesis, so he and his group can work on evacuating people, which Seth accepts. Then everyone leaves, entrusting Nemesis to Seth. Suddenly, the Nemesis breaks free from the magic seal. Seth launches his Titan punch, but it does not affect the Nemesis's soft body. The Nemesis then chases after Seth like crazy. Seth then kicks and punches the Nemesis but gets knocked down by it. He then thinks of an idea. He lures the Nemesis and binds him with huge metal chains he found. Suddenly, Nemesis releases his magical beam and destroys the town. Seth manages to survive the attack. He then hears the screams of Tommy from the bank. When Seth arrives at the bank, he is surprised to see the Bravery Quartet robbing people. Don Bossman reveals that they are treasure hunters who take advantage of Nemesis to rob people and thanks Seth for making their job easy. When Seth questions his duty as a sorcerer, Don Bossman answers that sorcerers and normal people live in different worlds. People expect sorcerers to fight Nemesis for them but will always treat them badly. Seth attacks Don Bossman and his group but gets knocked down by a group member, Gigi's magic. The Bravery Quartet leaves citizens tied up and the Nemesis arrives to kill them. Seth consoles Tommy and steps forward to face the Nemesis. He uses all his strength to stop the Nemesis's magical blast with his bare hand, which surprises everyone. Seth defeats the Nemesis with his Titan punch. When the injured Nemesis once again becomes stable, Alma appears and slices the Nemesis in half with her skull attack. Seth then faints in Alma's arms. When he wakes up, he finds himself covered in bandages. Alma scolds him for using his magic without gloves and warns him about the Inquisition, a military organization. Seth then declares that he will destroy all the Nemesis by finding their nest. Alma then tells him about the legendary Nemesis's nest called Radiant, but there's no information about it. The next day, Seth tries to sneak out to search for Radiant, but Alma catches him. Unexpectedly, Alma doesn't try to stop him. She even gives him gloves and her broom as a parting gift and makes him promise not to become a monster. Before leaving, he hugs and thanks Alma for the last time and then flies away on his broom. With tears in his eyes, he sets off to go on his journey. On his way, Seth bids farewell to the villagers and his friend Tommy. 3 days after his departure, Seth crashes at the Inquisitor's ship and gets arrested for it. During interrogation, Seth introduces himself as a sorcerer when he is asked about his horn. Dart Dragonov, one of the captains of the Inquisition, then reveals to Seth that they persecute sorcerers because of their curse. Then the Inquisitors lock Seth in a black-silver cage which blocks his magical power and take his stuff away. Inside the cage, Seth remembers how Alma warned him from revealing his horn. She told him to be cautious of the yellow cat and to go to a research town called Artemis to look for a powerful sorcerer named Yaga who might know about Radiant. Seth then notices Melly and her friend Mr. Boobry, who is a small flying creature, trapped with him. Melly introduces herself as a sorcerer from Artemis. Seth and Melly befriend each other. Later, Melly's guardian, Doc, a researcher from Artemis, also gets arrested by the military for carrying the remains of Nemesis in his ship. Mr. Boobry then steals the keys of the cage from Inquisitor and helps them escape. They search for Seth's stuff before leaving. Dragonov catches them in the act. Seth strikes knights approaching them with his Titan Punch and Melly shields them by using her defensive magic. After defeating the knights, Melly's personality becomes the complete opposite under stress, which is her curse. She then attacks the knights with her offensive magic. Meanwhile, Seth retrieves his stuff. When Dragonov threatens to shoot Melly with an arrow, Seth takes Doc's captured ship and they all manage to escape. On Doc's ship, Seth asks Melly to teach him about magic in the future. Soon they reach the city of Sorcerer, Artemis Institute. Seth was awestruck by seeing the vast numbers of sorcerers in the city. He registers Doc as his guardian. Melly and Doc advise him to register himself as a civilian so he can use the city's facilities and meet Yaga. Doc urges Seth to attend the admission ceremony in order to become a citizen of Artemis. In the admission ceremony, the Master Lord Majesty, the institution's founder and its ruler, welcomes all the sorcerers on the stage and reveals that his goal is to eradicate the curse of all sorcerers. Seth, along with other sorcerers, goes on the stage and signs the contract which grants them Artemis's citizenship. Master Lord Majesty then reveals that because of the contract, the sorcerers now owe a huge debt to the Academy for using their services, and to repay the debt, they must go on a mission as Artemis hunters. Seth now understood Alma's warning of the yellow cat. Later, the trio goes into town to find Yaga, but they return with an increased debt which makes Doc nervous. Seth then meets a mysterious man who knows about Yaga. The mysterious man explains to Seth that Artemis Academy uses the money from citizens' debt to protect sorcerers. He questions Seth's dream, and after seeing his determination, the man reveals that he is Yaga. The next day, Seth asks Melly to teach him offensive magic so he can prove himself worthy of Yaga's teachings. Melly tells him that only her opposite personality performs offensive magic and reluctantly refuses to teach him. They then go to find Doc for help. They find Doc waiting in the cafe to confess his love for Miss Melba, who runs a Kettle coffee shop. Seth and Melly introduce themselves to her. Miss Melba treats them to lunch. During lunch, Doc accepts Seth's request of teaching him offensive magic to impress Miss Melba. Soon after they leave, Doc tries to teach Seth magic by reading instructions from grimoires, but Seth fails in every attempt and injures Doc while practicing. The group later gathers at the Kettle coffee shop where Melly's curse gets activated, and she then attacks Seth with her offensive magic spell Meteor Drop constantly to make him learn the magic. Seth runs for his life. Suddenly, debris from walls falls due to Melly's blast. To save her, Seth successfully activates the Meteor Drop spell and destroys debris with his magic. When Melly switches back to her normal personality, Seth thanks her. The next day he passes Yaga's test. Yaga tells him that he needs to become a strong and first-rate sorcerer to reach Radiant. Yaga then accepts Seth as his pupil. Seth then diligently practices magic under Yaga's guidance. One day, the group gathers in a Kettle coffee shop where Doc gets captured by a squirmy and slimy creature called Devilfish Kraken. The monster lives in an underground sewer system and loves coffee. Yaga assigns the task of rescuing Doc to Seth and Melly to test their ability. They use a huge bucket filled with coffee to bait the Kraken, and Seth punches it several times with his Titan Punch until he face plants into the floor. The Kraken takes the bucket and leaves while shooting ink at them. They try to use ground traps, nets, and sleeping arrows, but they fail as the Kraken uses Doc to trigger them. In their final attempt, they use a spicy coffee blend that makes the Kraken puke. Melly uses her gravity spell to trap the Kraken and Seth punches it, bringing the Kraken down and rescuing Doc. One day Seth ruins his gloves given by Alma during his magic training. Yaga takes his ruined gloves and gives him black-silver gloves which prevent Seth from using his magic. When Seth complains, Yaga tells him that these gloves will help him to understand how to use his magic. Yaga threatens Seth that if he takes these gloves off, he will be expelled. Later, the trio goes to meet the Master Lord after receiving an invitation. The Master Lord informs them that they have acquired the highest debt in the history of Artemis Academy, and assigns them the job to repay him. When Seth cleans the city walls to pay his debt, he encounters the Bravery Quartet who are trying to break in. Melly jumps straight into battle, but her magic is blocked. The Bravery Quartet pulls out their quick magical fart attack but is blocked by Melly's shield. Melly and Seth find out that the gang's underwear is their source of power. Don Bossman uses his multiple magical fart attack, which once again is blocked by Melly. When Don Bossman notices Seth's gloves, he tells him the importance of power and how sealing his power will make him suffer. Seth dismisses his advice and the quartet uses their ultimate magical fart attack, which is blocked by Melly. Seth defeats him with his kick while Melly defeats the rest of the members. When Bossman tries to capture Melly, Mr. Boobry gets on his face, which makes him fall down. Seth flies on his broom, removes his gloves, then activates his magic and saves Don from falling. Later, Seth apologizes to Yaga. Yaga understands his reason and gives him Alma's gloves back. He tells Seth that Alma gave him these gloves to hide the fact that he can use magic barehanded, unlike most of the other sorcerers who need tools to use magic. After living for 1 month in Artemis, one day Seth goes to town with Melly to see the festival. They meet Doc in the cafe, who suggests Seth to participate in the broom race and win prize money of 10 million dimes. Afterward, they meet Nick, the champion of the previous broom race, who mocks Alma for not working with Artemis and running away. In his view, Alma is a weak sorcerer. Seth becomes angry and claims that Alma is one of the strongest sorcerers. Nick tells Seth that as her apprentice he should prove his claims by winning the broom race. Seth accepts his challenge. Doc pays for their registration fee so they can compete in the race. Before the race starts, Seth notices all his opponents have the newest broom models. When the race starts, Seth manages to catch up to Nick with Alma's old broom. Suddenly, Master Lord intervenes in the race with his large flying robot and attacks other participants to make them lose. Seth destroys his robot with his Titan Punch and makes him crash. He then joins the race again. Seth, with his amazing speed, once again catches up to Nick, but then suddenly he abandons the race to save other competitors from falling and let Nick win the race. Watch this next video. See you on the next one.